The cruelest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes when your own family looks you in the eye and decides your life is worth more to them dead than alive. My name is Thalassa Greystone. I'm 69 years old. At my own retirement party, I watched my daughter-in-law slip something into the champagne glass she knew I always used. She smiled, handed it to me like a gift. I smiled back and quietly switched glasses. Minutes later, the sound of a body hitting the floor cut through the laughter. And it wasn't me lying there. The barn by the Hudson glowed with strings of warm lights, every table draped in linen, every glass polished to a shine. Old colleagues, neighbors, and friends filled the space with laughter and toasts, their voices rising like a tide. Tara, who usually groaned about doing the dishes or setting a table, had transformed herself into the perfect hostess. She floated through the crowd with a fixed smile, arranging flowers, adjusting napkins, checking on the bartender as if her life depended on it. Grant moved just behind her, charming every guest, lifting his glass to clink with theirs, the golden sun basking in borrowed praise. I watched them both closely. In the swirl of people and music, I caught sight of Tara at the drinks table. She glanced over her shoulder, her manicured fingers fishing a small dropper bottle from her purse. With practiced precision, she tipped the clear liquid into one particular champagne flute, my flute, the one with the tiny chip along the rim I always reached for without thinking. She turned, eyes sparkling, carrying the glass toward me as though it were a gift. Here, you deserve this more than anyone. A toast to the next chapter. I accepted it with a gracious smile, masking the jolt that ran down my spine, as she shifted her attention to a neighbor, showing off the new bracelet glittering on her wrist. I moved quietly, sliding the glass onto the table in front of Colleen, her own mother, who stood nearby, distracted in conversation. 5 minutes later, the music fractured into screams. Colleen's face twisted, her lips fumbling around words. This tastes bitter. Before her knees buckled and she collapsed onto the wooden floor. Foam touched the corners of her mouth. Guests rushed, chairs scraped. Someone shouted for 911. Grant pushed through the chaos, gripping my shoulder hard. "Mom, go home. We'll handle this." His tone carried a flicker too much urgency, and when I looked into his eyes, something darted across them. Fear, calculation, a secret thought he couldn't quite bury. I gave a small nod. Let him believe I would retreat. I stepped out into the night, the wind off the Hudson slicing cold against my skin. Behind me, panic filled the barn, but ahead of me stretched a silence sharp enough to cut. Inside my chest, one thought beat steady as a drum. They think I didn't see. The emergency ward at St. Luke's Cornwall reeked of antiseptic and fear. I sat quietly in the corner while chaos rippled through the room. Doctors huddled, nurses moved fast, monitors beeped in steady rhythms. From where I was, I heard one physician lower his voice to a nurse. "Looks like benzodiazepines mixed with alcohol, lorazepam in liquid form." The words sliced through me. I kept my eyes forward, my face calm, but inside, something coiled tight. Out in the hallway, Tara clutched her designer purse like a lifeline, sobbing into her manicured hands. Her cries came sharp, too practiced, as if she'd studied the role of grieving daughter and now was desperate to make it believable. Grant sat rigidly on a plastic chair, head bent over his phone, thumbs flying as message after message lit up his screen. He wouldn't look at me. I stood, walked slowly toward Tara, and laid a hand gently on her trembling shoulder. Good thing Colleen didn't drink much, just a few sips. Her body stiffened, her sobs faltered, and for a heartbeat her eyes betrayed her, wide, startled, hollow. Then she forced her face back into that mask of devastation. I turned away, my expression smooth, my voice soft. But inside my chest, my heart beat like a drum. My fingers closed tightly around the strap of my bag, the bag holding the remaining champagne bottle I had rescued from the party. Proof, evidence, a weapon. As the paramedics wheeled Colleen down the hall, I whispered to myself, a vow carved deep. This game has just begun, and I intend to play it to the end. The next morning, the knock at my door came just after 8. I opened it to find Grant standing there, holding a white box tied with string. Pastries from the bakery I loved. His smile was soft, too careful. I thought you could use some breakfast. Mom, he said, stepping into the kitchen like he owned the space. We sat at the long wooden table. He poured coffee, set out the pastries, and leaned forward with a tenderness that felt rehearsed. After everything that happened last night, living here alone, it's dangerous. Mom, you should really consider Green Willow's community. He slid a glossy brochure across the table, pictures of sunlit pools, group yoga, and smiling seniors at card tables, a resort dressed up as a retirement home. It's a one-time entrance fee, he added, voice casual, about $420,000, but it covers everything, safety, care, peace of mind. Isn't that worth it? I took a slow sip of my coffee, keeping my voice even. And who would manage my finances once I'm there? Grant's eyes flickered. He glanced at Tara. She reached into her bag and laid down a stack of papers. Power of attorney. Her nails tapped against the cover page. Just in case, of course. If you ever felt tired, Grant could handle everything for you. It's only for your protection. I looked at them both. No warmth, no concern, only the glint of anticipation in their eyes. Friday, then? Tara's voice chimed suddenly. She had her phone pressed to her ear, her tone bright and businesslike. Yes, Friday works perfectly. We'd like to reserve a spot as soon as possible. Her words hung in the air like smoke. I leaned back in my chair, smiling faintly, as if charmed by their efficiency. But inside, I felt nothing but a cold certainty. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't concern. This plan had been in motion for far too long. The morning after their pitch about Green Willows, I was still sifting through my next move when my phone buzzed. A message from Ruthie, my neighbor across the street, flashed on the screen. I caught something in a story from the party. Do you want to see it? I tapped the clip. The camera was shaky, the angle off, but the truth couldn't hide in pixels. There was Tara at the drinks table, her shoulders hunched just so, shielding her hands. A flash of glass, the unmistakable motion of a dropper, and then the quick slip of the bottle back into her purse. Ruthie had no idea what she'd captured, but she had just become my unexpected witness. I felt a chill settle, colder than the Hudson wind the night before. Proof existed outside my memory now. I called a number I hadn't dialed in years. Nina Lozano, I said when she answered. I want everything. Tara, Grant, the whole picture. Finances, prescriptions, insurance. If they've sneezed wrong, I want to know. Later that afternoon, I sat across from David Cho, my attorney of more than 2 decades. His office smelled of leather and polish, the kind of place where secrets turned into strategies. I laid it all out, the party, the glass, Colleen on the floor. He listened without interruption, then leaned forward, his face carved from stone. If they force you into a place like Green Willows, they won't stop with persuasion. They'll bring in a doctor willing to declare you incompetent. One signature, and your estate is gone. You'll be a guest in your own life. By evening, Nina was back on the line. Her voice carried no emotion, only facts. Tara purchased lorazepam syrup last week. She told the pharmacy it was for a family member with stress. I didn't need to ask who that family member was supposed to be. I set the phone down, staring at the chipped glass I'd hidden away in my cabinet. Each detail clicked together like pieces of a puzzle. Ruthie's video, Tara's prescription, David's warning. They weren't just circling. They were tightening a net around me, one I would have to tear open before it closed. 2 days later, Nina called again. Her words came rapid, relentless. They're drowning. Thalassa. Credit card debt north of 70 grand. The restaurant? Collapsed. Property taxes, delinquent. And the house? Remortgaged 3 times in 4 years. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles blanched. Every check I'd written, every rescue I'd offered, tuition for Lily, the down payment on that house, bailing out their credit cards, suddenly looked less like generosity and more like stepping stones they'd laid toward this moment. There's more, Nina added. I found a life insurance policy. $500,000. On you. Beneficiary. Tara. I froze in my kitchen. My eyes caught on the roses blooming by the window, planted decades ago by my late husband. Their red blurred as fury welled hot behind my eyes. My daughter-in-law had turned me into a payout on paper. And one last thing, Nina continued. They opened an online bank account under your name. Shadow credentials. If you die, money could be funneled there instantly. I lowered myself into the chair, the phone still pressed to my ear. For a moment, the weight of betrayal pressed down so hard I thought I might crumble under it. My own son, standing by while his wife mapped out my erasure. But grief didn't stay long. It hardened, sharp and hot, into resolve. They think they can steal my life and my dignity in one sweep. I whispered into the silence of the kitchen. But this time, I'll be the one setting the trap. By Tuesday afternoon, the knock on my door came soft but deliberate. A woman in a white lab coat stood there, smiling with professional warmth. Good afternoon, Mrs. Greystone. I'm a nurse consultant with Green Willows. Just routine outreach. She extended a clipboard toward me, her tone syrupy. At your age, it's always smart to do memory checks. Alzheimer's can creep in without notice. I took the survey sheet with steady hands and an equally steady smile. But inside, my stomach turned cold. They weren't wasting time. They were building the record, laying the paper trail that could erase me before I even realized it. That night, I returned from brushing my teeth to the acrid sting of gas filling my kitchen. The alarm shrieked, the kind of shrill that rattles your bones. I rushed to the stove, twisting the knobs shut. Someone had turned them just enough to leak, not ignite. An accident staged with precision. My heart pounded, but my mind was calm. I knew exactly what this was, the next step in their plan. By morning, my phone lit with a message from Tara. Mom, last night you said you were looking for Max. You know, the dog that died 10 years ago. Do you remember that? I stared at the screen, reading it once, twice, 3 times. A bold-faced lie. Max had been gone for a decade. Yes, but I hadn't mentioned him in years. They weren't just plotting in whispers anymore. They were writing a record, line by line, of my so-called decline. I set the phone down slowly, anger pulsing under my skin. They wanted to brand me confused, feeble, lost in the fog of age. But I was none of those things. They were building their fabricated file, and I would be building mine. That evening, I sat in my study, the lamplight casting a soft glow over the frame of my late husband's photograph. I touched the glass, whispering, if you were here, You'd tell me to fight fire with fire. The next morning, I acted. 2 security technicians arrived under the guise of routine maintenance, leaving behind hidden cameras tucked into the crown molding of the living room and the corner of the kitchen. A panic button, small enough to fit beneath my palm, was wired directly to the local police station. Later that day, David Cho walked into my kitchen, setting a leather folder on the table. His expression was grim but resolute. "Here's what we're going to do," he said. Inside were 2 documents. The first, an irrevocable trust, ironclad, carrying a clause he called the kill switch. If anyone files for guardianship or attempts to claim diminished capacity on your behalf, every asset you own transfers automatically to the Cancer Research Fund, he explained. They'll get nothing. The second, a freshly notarized power of attorney, valid in appearance but hollow in substance. This one authorizes control over exactly 1 account, containing $2. It looks legitimate, it's stamped, it's airtight, but if they lunge at it, they'll be exposing themselves. I traced the edge of the paper, a small smile tugging at the corner of my lips. If they're eager to sign, it means they're desperate. David nodded. And desperation always leaves fingerprints. When night fell, I picked up the phone and dialed Green Willows myself. My voice was calm, almost sweet. "I'd like to schedule a cognitive evaluation with Dr. Marcus Adlers as soon as possible, please." The receptionist confirmed a time later that week. I hung up, my heart beating steady. Adler was their chosen pawn, the doctor they'd planned to use against me. But by calling first, I had flipped the board. His evaluation would happen on my terms, not theirs. For the first time since that champagne flute touched my hand, I felt control return like oxygen to my lungs. The trap was set, and soon they'd walk right into it. Friday morning arrived dressed in false promises. The sunlight spilled through the wide windows of my kitchen, touching the long oak table where everything would unfold. I'd polished the wood until it gleamed, the smell of lemon oil lingering in the air. It had to look like any other morning, a place of comfort. But beneath the calm surface, I could feel the storm building. At precisely 10 o'clock, the front door opened without hesitation. Grant and Tara stepped inside as though they owned the place, both of them wrapped in the armor of crisp suits and cologne. Tara carried a leather portfolio pressed tightly to her chest. Grant had a briefcase, his tie too neatly knotted for a casual visit. They looked less like family and more like business partners about to close a lucrative deal. "Morning, Mom," Grant said, his voice artificially warm. Tara kissed the air near my cheek, her perfume sharp, cloying. "We've got everything ready. This will make life so much easier for you." They moved with rehearsed efficiency, sliding papers out of their cases, laying them across my kitchen table. Their smiles strained at the edges, the kind that revealed nerves beneath the gloss. I poured tea for myself, letting the steam curl between us. "Let's see it then." Tara smoothed her skirt, eyes glinting. "It's all here. The power of attorney. Once you sign, Grant can handle the financial details. No more stress for you." She leaned in, her voice dipped into a practiced hush. "This is just about keeping you safe." Her words were honey, but her eyes betrayed the hunger of someone about to sink their teeth into the feast. I picked up the pen with a slight tremor in my hand, one I exaggerated for their benefit. My signature scratched slowly across the page of the decoy POA, the document that gave them control over nothing more than $2 lonely sitting in an account I'd created solely for this trap. When I set the pen down, Tara's shoulders dropped in visible relief. Grant let out a long breath and reached under the table, squeezing her hand. I saw it, the subtle exchange of triumph, the silent message, We've won. And that was when the knock came. 3 sharp raps on the front door. I rose, smoothing my sweater as though nothing was amiss, and opened it to find Detective Alma Ruiz standing tall, her badge flashing in the morning light. Beside her was a financial crimes investigator, arms full of folders and evidence bags. "Mrs. Greystone," Ruiz greeted me, then turned her gaze past my shoulder. "We're here on official business. We have a warrant to review evidence connected to the suspected poisoning at your retirement party." Grant's jaw dropped. Tara froze, her painted nails digging into the folder she still clutched. Ruiz and her partner walked in with measured steps, laying sealed bags across the very papers Tara had placed on my table. Each item landed with the weight of a verdict. The champagne bottle I'd saved, tested positive for lorazepam. Printed stills from Ruthie's video. Tara's hand mid-motion with the dropper. A thick folder. The $500,000 life insurance policy with my name as the insured and Tara as the sole beneficiary. The room went silent except for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. The warmth drained, replaced by a chill that wrapped itself around every word, every breath. Grant's face flushed red, his lips parting, then sealing shut. Tara tried to gather herself, her mouth curving into a brittle smile. This must be a mistake. I sat down calmly, wrapped my fingers around my teacup, and lifted it to my lips. The porcelain was warm, the tea fragrant. When I spoke, my voice was steady, unshaken. "I switched glasses that night," I said softly. "If I hadn't, it wouldn't be Colleen in the hospital. It would be me." The words settled into the silence like stones into deep water, rippling outward. Tara's hand shook as the papers beneath her began to crumple. Grant's eyes darted toward the door, toward Ruiz, toward me, anywhere but the evidence in front of him. Detective Ruiz leaned forward, her gaze hard. "We'll be taking formal statements, but know this, we already have enough to move forward." I sipped my tea. Calm in the storm. Around me, the house seemed to hold its breath. The game I'd been forced into was reaching its crescendo, and for the first time, I wasn't the piece being moved. I was the one moving them, and the trap had just snapped shut. Chapter 9. The Masks Fall. Detective Ruiz flipped open Grant's phone, scrolling with steady fingers until she stopped and read aloud, her voice clear, unforgiving. "She'll be begging us by Sunday. Just make sure papers are ready." The color drained from my son's face. His lips quivered as he stumbled over words. "Mom, I didn't know. I thought it was just about convincing you to move into the community. I swear I didn't know." Ruiz cut him off, tapping the next line on the screen. "If she changes her mind, Dr. Adler will sign the capacity evaluation." The kitchen grew so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. My son's denial wilted under the weight of his own words staring back at him in black and white. And then, as though summoned by his own betrayal, the door opened again. Dr. Marcus Adler stepped into the room, his leather briefcase tucked under his arm. He froze mid-step when he saw the badges, the evidence bags, the officers standing stiff-backed in my kitchen. "Dr. Adler," David Cho said, rising from his chair with controlled calm, "would you like to explain why you've been receiving monthly payments from Grant and Tara Greystone?" The doctor's face twitched. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. The briefcase slipped slightly in his grip. They asked me to provide consulting, guidance. I was only offering professional consulting, David pressed, his tone sharp as glass, or preparing a false report to declare my client incompetent so they could take her estate. Adler's composure cracked. The words fell from him in a rush, each one damning. They said it was temporary, that Mrs. Greystone wouldn't know what was happening. They called it a precaution, just in case. They paid me to draft a report. The confession landed like a blow. Tara's body went rigid, her nails digging crescent moons into her palm. Grant buried his face in his hands. Detective Ruiz moved closer, her eyes narrowing on the couple. That's enough. Tara Greystone, you're under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit elder financial fraud. Grant Greystone, you're under arrest for conspiracy and aiding and abetting. The metallic snap of handcuffs echoed off the kitchen walls. Tara stiffened as the steel closed around her wrists, her jaw clenched so tight the veins in her neck stood out. Grant didn't resist. His shoulders sagged, the fight drained out of him. But Tara turned her head sharply toward me, eyes burning red, lips trembling not from fear but from rage. "You think you've won, don't you?" she hissed, her voice low and venomous. I held her gaze, unflinching, and spoke softly, almost kindly. "No, I didn't win. I survived. And I protected what no one has the right to steal." For a moment, everything stopped. The officers guiding them out, the papers scattered on my table, the faint creak of the floorboards beneath Adler's shoes. And then the spell broke, the shuffle of bodies filling the room again. Ruiz looked back at me as they led the pair toward the waiting patrol car. "You'll need to give a formal statement downtown, but tonight you rest. You've done more than enough." When the door shut behind them, silence wrapped around me. The kitchen that had once smelled of tea and lemon oil now reeked of betrayal and revelation. I sat down slowly, resting my palms on the cool surface of the table, letting the weight of it all press into me. They had tried to strip me of dignity, freedom, even my name. They had tried to write me off as a line item on a contract, a shadow in a care facility, a signature on a false report. And yet here I was, still whole, still mine. The mask was gone now, torn from their faces. The people I had once called family had revealed themselves not as protectors, but predators. And the only thing left for me was to remember the lesson I had always known deep down. Blood ties don't guarantee loyalty. When you see the truth, you don't flinch. You face it, and you fight. It had been several weeks since the arrests, but the echoes of that day still lingered in my house. Silence filled the spaces where Grant's voice used to call, where Tara's laugh used to ring false but convincing. Now it was quiet, too quiet some mornings, almost suffocating. Yet within that silence, something steadier had grown. Freedom. The newspapers had run their stories. Neighbors whispered, co-workers from my past sent cautious notes, and strangers in town glanced longer than they should have. I didn't care. Their opinions couldn't touch me. What mattered was the fact that I had lived, and the people who had plotted against me were no longer free to do harm. But I couldn't let my life end on that chapter. I needed something else. Not just survival, but renewal. So I decided to host a gathering of my own choosing, a retirement redo. This time there would be no masks, no false toasts, no poisoned glasses waiting in the corner, just the people who had stood beside me when the truth clawed its way into the open. The evening I chose was calm, the Hudson stretching wide and golden under a fading sun. The dock behind my home became our table. A few lanterns swung in the breeze, their soft light flickering against the wood. The smell of the river mixed with wine poured into glasses that clinked without pretense. Ruthie arrived first, still clutching her phone like it might catch another secret at any second. "I brought wine," she said, holding up a bottle with a grin. "It cost more than I wanted to spend, but you deserve it." Her eyes softened as she added, If I hadn't recorded that silly clip, who knows what would have happened? You gave me more than a video, I told her. You gave me proof that my instincts weren't madness. Nina came next, her leather jacket tossed over her shoulder, her eyes as sharp as the first day I met her. But when she hugged me, her arms were strong, steady. I don't usually get sentimental, she said with a smirk, but seeing you fight back like that, inspiring, reminds me why I do what I do. David arrived with his usual quiet dignity, a white bakery box in hand. They're from that same pastry shop, he explained, setting them down. I figured we could reclaim the memory of those croissants. We laughed together, though we both remembered the morning Grant had brought me pastries as bait. Detective Ruiz was last. Out of uniform now, she looked less like an officer and more like a friend who belonged. She didn't bring evidence or orders, only a steady presence. When she touched my arm, she said, "Most people break down when family betrays them. You didn't. You outmaneuvered them." Her words settled deep in me. I hadn't thought of it as strength at the time, just survival. But maybe survival was strength. We poured glasses and let the evening breathe. No fireworks, no speeches, just laughter, stories, and the kind of company that felt real. For once, I didn't need to scan faces for deception. I could exhale. Then I saw her. A slim figure walking down the gravel path, a backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Lily, my granddaughter. She hesitated at the edge of the dock, her eyes uncertain until they found mine. "Grandma," she said, breathless. "Can I stay here this summer? I want to apply for law school. Like you told me once, that the law can protect people who can't protect themselves. I want to do that." Tears burned the corners of my eyes before I could stop them. I opened my arms, and she stepped into them, clinging tight. For so long, I feared I'd lost her to her parents' influence. But here she was, choosing a different path, choosing me. "You'll always have a place here, Lily." I whispered into her hair, and I meant every word. Later, as the sun slid lower, I poured myself a drink into a brand new glass. Smooth, flawless, unmarked. I lifted it high, the fading light scattering across its rim, painting the Hudson in molten gold. "Lily," I said, my voice steady, "never let anyone use your age as an excuse to silence you. Your voice is yours. Guard it. Wield it. It's more powerful than you think." She nodded, her eyes shining with something I recognized, resolve. Around us, the river hushed. Ruthie laughed at a story Nina told. David leaned back, his hands folded, content. Ruiz sat quietly, watching, her presence a reminder that justice wasn't abstract. It was real, and sometimes it wore a badge. I looked at them all, the circle of people who had carried me through betrayal and back into life. For the first time, I didn't feel the sting of what I'd lost, my son's loyalty, my family's trust. Instead, I felt the weight of what I'd gained, clarity, freedom, and the strength to begin again. I raised my glass higher. "To living well." The words echoed softly, repeated by those around me. But the truth was, I wasn't toasting for them. I was toasting for me. Because I finally understood, the sweetest revenge isn't screaming at those who wronged you, or even watching them locked away. It's sitting in the warm glow of a summer evening, surrounded by loyalty and laughter, alive and unbroken, while those who betrayed you choke on the consequences of their own greed. The Hudson breeze lifted my hair as I drank. My heart was lighter, my voice firmer, my life, finally, my own. A new glass, a new beginning, And this time, no one could take it from me.